What is good, guys? It is Reed and I'm back with a banger of a video today. Today I'm going to be finally teaching a triumph routine, something I have not yet taught on the channel, but something you guys have probably seen me perform a lot. Now, I'm going to be teaching you a really awesome triumph because, in my opinion, the triumph is best when the spectators can shuffle. Problem is, most methods don't allow them to shuffle. They just get to see that it's been shuffled face up and face down.
Make a big mess on the table.
Now, the best way, and one of the only ways really, to allow the spectators to shuffle with a regular deck for a triumph is to use the cull. Now, the cull can be difficult, especially when you need to cull half the deck like you do in Kiosta Kimlat's Caligula Triumph, or in the triumph that I use that you guys have seen me perform a lot. And my favorite triumph, it's called the Open Cull Triumph. But that is not what I'm going to be teaching today, because I'm going to be teaching you an easy version of this. You can allow the spectators to shuffle. It does use the cull, but we're using the cull very sparingly. You don't need to cull the whole deck, and it's a great routine to practice your cull on. And it's a great routine in general, as it hits super hard. The spectator shuffles, they get to see and feel that the deck is actually shuffled, and then you can have a miracle, right? You do a triumph, which I think is pretty much the best impromptu effect that you can do with a deck of cards. So strap in. This is going to be an awesome tutorial. I'm going to call this the Half-Cull Triumph instead of the Open Cull Triumph. And it utilizes a few cool little ideas and a few little subtleties. I'm going to show you my Open Triumph idea that was inspired by Danny Dougherty's. He has an Open Triumph with it, which is super cool. You should check that out if you haven't. And this was also inspired by a Kiosta Kimlat idea in the context of when you do the cull. So without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Let me show you a quick performance of the Half-Cull Triumph. So the spectator would shuffle as much as they want. Then they would proceed to cut about half the deck, hand half to me, half to them, and I would show them that I want them to take their cards, mix them face up into face down, just like this. They can do this as many times as they want, continuing to take cards face up, face down, and giving them a shuffle, so we have cards face up, face down, all the way through the deck. Now they'll do the same thing, take their cards half face up, half face down, and they will mix as much as they would like. And as you can see here, I want them to see my state of my deck of cards here. Total mess, face up, face down, face up, face down, just absolute chaotic deck here. And what they'll do is they can take their deck of cards, which is also an absolute mess, and they can add it to my deck of cards, so we have an absolute crazy pile of cards. Now look, there are cards here that are face up. There are cards that are face down, face up, face down, face up, face down, total mess. But I want them to reach in here and they can take any card that they'd like. Let's say let's go with this one right here. And of course they could have had any one of these, but they chose the King of Spades. So we'll take the King of Spades and we'll just leave it right there. And of course, like I said, they could have had any one of these cards. Now if we look, you can see the chaotic mess that is this deck. You can see face up, face down, face up, face down. It's just an absolute mess of cards here. But I don't know where their card is, right? It might be face up like the 6, it might be face down like the King. But if I just wait here a moment, wave my hand, snap, every single card fixes itself. Seriously, every single card except for one. With any luck, that card should be the King of Spades. Alright guys, so time for the breakdown. I hope you enjoyed that performance. The brilliance about this is that it makes it easy and good for beginners and a great opportunity to practice your cull, because you only have to cull about half of the deck, alright? So you're culling much less than a typical Caligula Triumph or any triumph where you're fully culling the deck of cards. How you achieve that is through you shuffling half the deck and them shuffling half the deck. You're going to do something a little bit special to your half of the deck. Really, you're only culling about 12 cards because you're only culling face-up ones, essentially. So you're really in a good position here, and you can take as much time as you want because there'll be no heat on you because of the context where you're actually executing the cull. Now here's how this effect works. You're going to hand this deck to the spectator, and they're going to shuffle as much as they want. Now, once they're done shuffling, you're going to say, I want you to hand me about half of those cards. So they'll hand half to you and they will keep half. So let's assume they've handed you this half. What you're going to do is you're going to flip it face up in your hand, okay? Now you're going to say, what I want you to do in a second, you're going to shuffle the cards face up and face down. As you're doing that, here's what you do. You're going to cut off about 2/3 of the deck, okay? So 2/3 you're turning into your hand bookwise so that you have them face down, right? So that's why you start with the deck face up in your left hand. You pick about 1/3 of the packet that's in your hands and you flip the 2/3 face up. And now you're gonna faro them, okay? Depending how you faro. If you faro from front to back like this, then you're gonna wanna make an adjustment. I faro where I take the top half and pull it to the back. A lot of people kind of go this way. So when you're in this position, you're just gonna place these cards anywhere into that bunch. You're gonna take the 1/3 and just push it anywhere into the 2/3. Now what you do is you're gonna, this is all under the guise of explaining. So you're gonna say, I want you to take about half the cards, you're gonna flip some face up, some face down, and you're gonna shuffle them into each other just like that. Now what I've actually done here is a shift. So I actually haven't shuffled any of these cards. All the face-up cards are now on the bottom of the deck. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. What you could do is just shuffle it through, and this is what I do, and I'll just diagonal jog it, and I'll essentially DPS everything to the bottom, just like that. Now that's obviously very difficult, and that's not what you need to do here. Because they're gonna be so focused on shuffling their packet, all you need to do is say, you're gonna take half the cards like this, face up, face down, and shuffle them together. Now you pause here as you start to slowly press it in. At this point, they begin their shuffle, and I guarantee they're gonna look down. They're gonna look down as they're flipping this deck over, and all you do is strip those out and throw them on top. Okay, and it doesn't matter really because you're about to do a genuine shuffle of those cards, okay? So that's the way I used to do this all the time. So again, you say, you're just gonna shuffle the cards face up, face down, just like this, right? You're just gonna push them together like that. So go ahead. Now when they look down, you just strip those out and throw the packet on top. Or, like I said, what I do, I just push them through and I shift them to the bottom. You've done your about 1/3, your 2/3, you've pushed the 1/3 in, and then you've just stripped it out and put it on the bottom. Make sure it's on the bottom. So now there's a face up chunk on the bottom. Now you have a 2/3 face down with a 1/3 face up on the bottom, and then you're gonna do the same thing, but now from the top you're gonna pull off 1/3 instead of from the bottom. So you're keeping 2/3 in your hand, you're flipping now the top face up. Now you have a 1/3 in this hand, and what you're gonna do, this time you're gonna faro these or shuffle these. It doesn't have to be a perfect faro, but you're gonna get it so that it's only in this top half of cards. Now it doesn't really matter, but you just want it to be about in this top 1/3 of cards, and you want it to be as close to 1-to-1 as you can because it makes it kind of look the display really nice. And you push those in really fairly. I like to actually do the shuffle so they can hear it, and now what you can do is you can just pull off cards and throw them back on top, so it kind of keeps looking like you're still shuffling the deck of cards. So that's what I do. I just kind of run a few, throw them on top, run a few, throw them on top. And now I'm not really disturbing much of the order, but it still looks like I'm shuffling the cards. So that's what I do while they continue to shuffle their pack face up, face down as much as they want. Now one thing, when you're practicing this, when you pick up the spectator's deck to give it a mix, don't flip it and do a perfect faro, because the spectators will never shuffle so that the cards are a perfect 1-for-1 mix. And then you'll be practicing your cull and you'll get into a rhythm of cull one, skip one, cull one, skip one, but that's not how it's going to be in the real world. There's already mixed, but what you do is you take half the cards, flip them, so now you have a face up half and a face down half, and then you just overhand shuffle them, because that's how most spectators are going to do it. So oftentimes when spectators shuffle, you're going to have clumps of cards that are together and not together. So while they're doing that, once again, when they hand you the deck, you hold it face up and you pull off about 2/3 and you flip it into your hand. You're going to shuffle the 1/3 into the 2/3 and either press it through, or as they look away, you strip it out to the bottom. So now you have a face up chunk on the bottom. Then you're going to pull off about 1/3, flip it face up, and you're going to shuffle it about as perfectly as you can into the top half of the deck. Again, it doesn't matter if it goes into the bottom half because it's just going to add to the face up stock, but it's nice if you can get it into the top half and you square it up, and then you can just do some false shuffles by just kind of peeling some off the top and throwing them back on top. Now when they're done, you want to draw their attention to your pile and you say, look, I want to prove to you and show you the condition of these cards. It makes sense, right? You've just shuffled. They want to make sure you haven't done anything sneaky and you're doing what you say. So you start to go through and you're going to leave a little base, about this many cards. What I typically do is I start culling after the 3rd face down card. But in this case, just the way they happen to be spread out, maybe if these ones were switched, then I'd start culling at the King of Diamonds. But because it was in this orientation, I don't think this looks convincing enough, so I'd probably leave one other face card up. But you kind of make your decision as you go. So you begin your spread, and you're going to cull the face down cards, right? And like I said, you need to leave a little base so it looks convincing at the top. So I leave roughly this many cards, but just so it looks like a good mixture, sort of. You kind of just judge it based on how your deck looks. So I'll start culling at the 7. It's also good to remember this King of Diamonds, because in a second, the card that you leave when you're doing this is going to be the last card you need to call later on. So let's remember King of Diamonds, and then I'm going to call all the face-up cards. And all you're saying is, look, you can see this condition, face up, face down, it's a total mess, and I'm just culling here all of the face-up cards. If you haven't seen my cull video, go check it out. Cull, 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 and then as I start to see a chunk of either face down or the chunk of face up, I just close up, push all those culled cards to the bottom, and now what we have is a big chunk of face down, a big chunk of face up, with a few cards that are mixed at the top just for the illusion. So right now we've already sorted one half of the deck. It's basically completely sorted, and we don't need to do anything. So now we're only going to need to fix their half of the deck when the trick actually begins, because the trick hasn't even really begun yet. This is just the shuffling process. Now what I do, if I have a table, I throw these on the table and I spread just a little bit like this. So I'm just kind of spreading the top. But you have this nice illusion if you keep this brick together here, where you see face up, face down, and then you see a few more face up near the bottom, and it really looks like it's still mixed, especially after they just saw you go through like this. So I'll just drop it and kind of go like this. And I won't draw attention to it, but it speaks for itself. And then I'll say, look, you saw my cards, I want you to go through your cards, see the chaos, really make sure they're face up. So now they'll spread through theirs, see it, and I'll say, all right, just throw it on top of mine, and I'll spread theirs a little bit so they have one last nice image. Now you see how convincing this image looks, even though half the deck is already sorted. If we're doing this in the hands, what I do is just kind of spread these like this, have them look through their deck, and then I'd say, look, you can see the chaos, and we'll close it up. So I just kind of do a small little fan of those top cards so they see that my deck is actually mixed as their deck goes on top. Now you want to make sure the top card here is face up, right? If you're culling face up cards, you need a face up card on top to be your cover card. So if it's face down, I just turn it face up. If there's 2 or 3 on the top, you have 2 options. You can either take it so there's only 1 and move them to the bottom. I don't think it's a huge deal if you just kind of take the deck and you say, look, we have all these cards, and you go like that. Or if you have like 3 cards face up, you can just start and cull those 2 cards, right? Or you just pick up all these and you reverse spread, and then you can begin your culling with those ones. But regardless, let's assume we have 1 card here on the top. What you're going to do is you're going to say, look, I just want to show you one last time, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you, and you begin to spread, culling the face up cards. Remember, the first one's a cover card, so you leave it for now. And you say, look, you can see face up, face down, face down, face down, face up, face down, face up. Just at the point where it starts to feel like you've said it too much, right? When it starts to feel awkward, like, okay, why does he keep saying this? You know, after about 3-4 seconds of you saying face up, face down, face up, face down, it kind of gets awkward and like, okay, I need to say something different. So right when you hit that point, you say, what I want you to do is just reach in and pull out one of these cards, but you're continuing the cull. So the beauty is, as you're showing them this and you're telling them to reach in and pull out a card, you're continuing the cull. So now they're focused on a card. They haven't even picked their card yet, and we're still sorting the deck. This is the idea from Kiosta Kimlak. He has a version of Triumph that sort of reorders the whole when you do the cull and stuff like that. That's truly brilliant. So that's kind of where this idea is borrowed from. So now as they're sorting, you say, take any one, face up, face down, and as they're deciding, you're still culling cards. So by the time they finally say stop and they pick one out, they look at it, they don't even have to show you, you're already well ahead of them. So what I do is I just break at this moment. Wherever they take the card from, I break like this. And now, of course, they're going to put their card face down because you don't want to see it. So what you do is you have them place it back onto this packet, and as you come here, you thumb it off, and you add it to your culled pile. This is the only face down card you're going to cull is their card, right? So they add it here, and you come, and underneath, you're going to cull it with the rest of them, and then continue adding the face down cards over top. And then if there's any cards left over, in this case, there isn't any cards left over, so I could just close up right away, which is nice. But if there is any cards left over, I'd continue calling. I'd say, look, you could have had any one of these ones, right? I guess I missed it there because I went past and I flipped up a few, but that was actually the last card that I called here, as you can see, was the King of Diamonds, the one that I had memorized earlier. So I'd be going through, I'd be going, and then I'd see the King of Diamonds. The second I cull it, I know I've culled all the face-up cards, and all I need to do, close the deck, and we're done. What that does is that leaves a chunk of face down cards with a cover card, a chunk of face up cards, and their card in the middle of the face down, in the middle of the face up cards. So now we just need a little bit of a cleanup. So what you do now is you have this beautiful display. So this is the open triumph moment. In Danny Ortiz's Open Triumph, he has this really nice display where he then closes up and immediately does a fan and all the cards fix themselves. So we can actually do something sort of similar to this, but in the sense of a dribble. So if you think about this, Watch how good this dribble looks. And it looks like chaos. Face up, face down, face up, face down, even though the deck's already sorted. So why that works is because there are cards in the middle, we have a lot of break points. So when you're doing the dribble, their eyes see face up, but then immediately they get broken and see a face down. But then there's a transition back to face up, so that's 2 transitions. And then when you go fast, you get a second transition here, and finally another transition. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 transition points where they're seeing face up, face down, face up, face down. And when you do it fast, what you're gonna do is you're gonna drop off about a block of cards, so a bunch of face down, then you're gonna start to dribble, and their card's gonna show up. The second you spot it, or roughly when you get to the middle, you speed up again through those face up cards, slow down so you get some face down, speed up again, and you get the cover card. So when you control that speed and you add this motion of like this, you get this really nice display. It puts some of the face up cards this way because they're near the top, and some of these face down near the bottom, and you have this really nice display that looks like the deck is totally mixed, right? So if you start over here and you come this way, it's gonna be face up, but then it's gonna be face down as you come back, right? If I did that slow. So now when you grip everything, you say, look, face up, face down, you can kind of riffle through. At the bottom here, show some of the face ups. At the bottom here, the face ups at the top. On this side, and you can just kind of show both sides. It looks like such a mess. The messier the better here. You square up. Now for the cleanup, as you square up and you hold the deck like this, you'll see a nice natural break where the cards change. So you're just gonna look and you're gonna pick up right there. And I like to just hold a pinky break as I square it back into my hand. Hold a break there. And then I say, look, I don't know where your card is. And as I pick up, if this card is face up, I know I've done it right? Because it's face down, face up. So when I go and I pick up, as long as this is face up, I know I've done it right. For the most part, I mean, if you pick the face down, it's definitely wrong. But if you have the 2 face-to-face cards, you definitely know you're right here. So as long as there's no issue with this next sequence, as you'll see, it's a nice check. So you pick up and you pull off the cover card at the break. So you say, look, I don't know if your card is face up like the Queen of Clubs. So now you've just added the cover card to the face up pile. Then you turn your wrist and you say, or face down like the Jack of Hearts, right? And again, if you see this face up, you know you've done it right because you just had 2 face-to-face cards. Or face up like the Jack, and as you come back, you're gonna just turn this all the way over. Face up, set the deck down, take a little pause here, recap here, let this moment sink in. You saw the chaos, I just spread the cards, you saw how crazy it was. Well, watch, if I snap, you spread the cards, all the cards are fixed except for one. Invite them to turn it over, and it is, of course, their card. So again, as a quick little recap here with some of the important ideas and subtleties, they're gonna shuffle the deck. They're gonna hand you half. You flip the half face up and you say, look, I want you to take about half the cards face up, half face down, you're gonna mix them together. So what you do, flip off about 2/3, flip it face up, and shuffle the face up into face down, push it in and say, I just want you to shuffle it just like that, go ahead. As they look away, if you can't do the shift through, you're gonna strip those out and just throw them to the bottom. We're in this position. And then as they're doing that, you just flick off this time just 1/3 face up and you shuffle that near the top of the deck. So it's gonna be in the top stock. And you actually can shuffle that, you can make it shuffle, and then as they're shuffling, the rest of this is just false. You're just peeling off some cards and throwing them back on top as you wait for them to be done. When they have finished, right, so we'll simulate that they're shuffling now, they've done whatever they want, they are finished. You say, look, I want to prove to you your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. I want to show you the chaos that are these cards here. So none of these we have to call yet until about here, because that's like a good image. That's a good display, right, that it's messed up. So after this King of Clubs, I'm going to remember King of Clubs. It's going to be the last card I need to call later. I'm going to go 10 of Diamonds, and I'm just saying, look, you can see how messy this card is. These cards are, sorry, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. Then you just close up once you realize you've hit your block of face-up cards, and you square them up. Set this down and spread to show your little packet display at the top. You say, look, spread your cards. Look, you can see the mess that these are, right? Take them, add them to your pile in a nice mess. The more chaotic you get with Triumph, the better. You square everything up. Now we want a face-up card on top. So I'd say, look, you can see these cards, a total mess here. In this case, I have 2 cards. So what I would do is reverse spread, and now I can just begin to call with this card underneath already, this 10 here. Now I'm going to call the 5, and I'm going to say, look, you can see this mess. We got a bunch of face downs, face up, face down, face down, face down, face down, face up, face up, face up. At this point, it starts to be a bit redundant, so I say, look, reach in, just take one out, anyone you want. I'm still calling, still calling. They reach in, let's say they take this one, the 10 of spades. All right, now, as they're looking, I pause, right? And at this point, you want to time it so you know you're getting close to the bottom, right? You kind of time, you remember you only have about half the deck to work through, so it does take some timing. You're culling out some of the cards as you say, look at this mess, and then you say, pick one, but you know they're going to take a bit of time, so you do need to time it so that, you know, they kind of end near the end, so you don't have many cards to cull. Or even if you kind of cull all of the cards before they've picked one, that is okay. But let's say they stop here, then you invite them to look at their card, they put it back, and you say, perfect. As you come to bring this packet on top, you're just putting it all on top of this deck, culling that card as well, and then you're opening up on this packet here, right? Because your culled cards are underneath, so you have this nice step. Then you just keep feeding the rest of the cards in, and you say, look, you could have chosen any one of these. Now I hit my King of Clubs. I know that's the last card I need to cull, and I can just close up right away. Boom. Do the nice display. So look, you can see the mess of that card. It's face up, face down, face up, face down. Again, that's just timing. You just do quick, and you go back and forth a little bit, and you get this really nice display, even though everything's already sorted. As you square that up, you find the natural break, get a pinky break, and you pull off the top card, and you say, I don't know if your card was face up like the queen, face down like the two, and you flip the whole thing back on top, set it down, recap here, say, think about that. You shuffled, you saw, you felt every card face up, face down, but if I just snap, every single card straightens itself out except for one, and that is the 10 of spades. Now, a few quick points of troubleshooting. Like I said, it's about timing. So if you think about it, you only have half the deck to correct in the second part, right, when you're going through culling. So you spread, and the first little bit you're explaining, you know, you see face up, face up, face up, face down, face up, face down, face up, face down, face up. And you say, look, I just want you to reach in and take one of these. So once you've culled maybe, let's assume, okay, it's about 26 cards we have to go through. About half of those we cull, so about 13. Once you've culled about 5 or 6 is when you invite them to take a card. Once you've culled 5 or 6 face-up ones, then you say, take a card. Now you kind of slow down. You just time it. You might need to go slower here if they're waiting a long time, because you don't really want to get to the end where they see all of this, you know, messed up, right? So you just slow down. And you say, and then you can just kind of say, yeah, just anyone, just take one. You know, if they're really taking a long time, just any one of these. If you're really worried, you could just spread and just stop, offer them a card to take out like that instead of continuing to go through if you're really getting close to the end. Or even, look, I call out the last face up card, so now I'm only left with these face down and face up. You can still keep going a little bit because it still looks like a mess. You just don't want to go all the way through like that. So you could, you know, when you hit that point, you could just stop here and say, just take one out. They take it out. Now, if you've done all your culling, the nice thing is they set that card, the Jack of Hearts, of course, face down. You cull it out, and you literally just close the deck, right? And it's good. Now, of course, the Jack of Hearts would be on the bottom in that case. So what you need to do, this is another point, you might have noticed that the card always ends up near the top of the spread and not very centered. So what you could do, if you want their card centered, the reason that happens is because their cards is one of the last ones that gets called out, so it always goes near the bottom when we close up. Like in this case, a perfect example, the Jack, their card would be on the bottom, which obviously we don't want. So what you would do in this case is, as you're closing, instead of putting it on the bottom, you just push off a block of cards, so you end up somewhere in the middle. Look, I'm somewhere in the middle of all of the face-up cards, right? See that Jack of Clubs? So what do I mean? So let's say I'm here. I have all of the face-up cards called out, right? Everything, I'm done. I have my block down here, but they've just selected their card, so they put it back, and now when I cull it, it ends up at the bottom. So if I were to close, it would be on the bottom of the deck, which means when I reveal it, it'll be all the way at the top and not sandwiched in the middle, which obviously doesn't look as nice. So what you do is when you get to here, and just before you close and put them on the bottom, instead you just push off a chunk so you end up in the middle of the face-up cards. They won't notice because you're here, and then you just push off a chunk, and now you're here, right? So there's nothing to see. And now you close up and put these ones on the bottom, and just let those go in the middle of that face-up chunk, right? And now it'll work out perfectly. You're in the same position. You have your face downs, your face up, and now their card is sandwiched more in the middle of the deck. So when you find your break, peel off, do this move, and flip, set it down, their card is going to end up closer to the middle of the deck. So that's a nice little tip for you. Also, of course, you could do that final move being a bit more deceptive, doing a half pass. You know, you just kind of get your cover card out of the way, and then all you would need to do is find your break point and execute a half pass like that to flip the deck over, and then you could go into that. So in terms of some uses and other ideas really quickly, the plot that you can use for this is something really, really neat. I would often do this just as a triumph, just, you know, you see all these cards mixed, face up, face down, face up, face down. I also have another plot I use that involves like the chaos of life and how, you know, the one card is the moment of clarity, the card they chose throughout their chaotic life, and this symbolizes anyone's life, the tough things we might be going through, and then boom, it all straightens out. But I'm going to teach that probably in a separate video. The one you could use is as a memory test. You say, look, you know, I test my memory by mixing cards face up, face down, and then I have this crazy mess and I spread the cards face up, face down. I try to remember all the face up ones. Now it's very difficult, but I want to try it with you. See how well you do. So now you give them half the deck, they shuffle face up, face down, and when you put the deck back together, you should be in this position. So remember, you've set up the memory test, you say, look, I want you to try to remember all the face up cards that you can here. So you're going through, and you say, look, face up, face down, just do your best, try to remember as many cards as you can. And as you get here, you say, look, actually, you know what? Let's have you pick a card just as a sort of a placeholder. So they'll take one out, you'll put it back, go through and say, all right, just try to, remember as many of these as you can, like I said. Boom. So you see what I did there? I pushed off the block, and now I'm just going to close up the deck inside that block, so their card ends up more near the middle. And I say, now, did you have any luck guessing any of these face up, face down cards? Any memory at all besides this one? And they'll say no. Right? Because obviously that's very difficult. And I say, okay, well, I mean, it is hard to guess all these face up ones and all these face down ones because it's such a mess, it's crazy. But this deck was actually easier. And they'll say, what do you mean? I'll say, well, in this case, all the cards were face up, so you didn't really have to remember anything. And they'll be very confused. You reiterate, no, seriously, look, every single card was face up. At this point, you get this really awesome moment where they're like, what the hell? And they're confused, and you have that nice little joke about the memory test, and every card was actually face up the whole time, so I don't know why they struggled so much to remember it. Then you say, of course, but except for one card, what was the card you chose? 6 of spades, or 6 of clubs, and you have the reveal. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. That is my Half-Cull Triumph. Great one of my favorite effects. Triumph's probably my favorite impromptu effect of all. This is one that I practiced with for a long time to get my cull down before I do the Triumph that I do today. If you would like to learn my official Triumph, the one that I always perform, you guys see me performing a lot, has some ideas from this and a lot of other awesome ideas into it, let me know. Like this video, and maybe if we get enough likes, I will teach it at some point. It's very well, very closely guarded to me. I love it so much, but I'd love to share it with you guys if you want. So, thank you for watching this video. If you would like to improve your cull or get better at the Triumph, send me an email, rf.sleights@gmail.com, and we can set up a private lesson and we can get your cull going great, going smooth. Also, make sure you check out my cull video. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, if you need any help with this effect or anything else, send me an email and we can work out a private lesson. Triumph is absolutely worth your time. Put in the time to master this one, really get it down, and go through all the nuances and the handlings because it's absolutely incredible. So with all that said, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.